Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special meeting for the West Fargo City Commission for October 6th. I'd ask that everybody in the room please silence their cell phones as we prepare for this meeting. And I'd also like to pass on to you that Commissioner George is not with us this evening. Again, she's on a work-related assignment and she's traveling. So with that, I would respectfully ask that you join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. Commissioners?
Make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on, we are now on the regular agenda. Item number 1 is to confirm the special assessment list. It's presented by Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator, for the Street Improvement District number 2250, Sheyenne Street Reconstruction from Beaton Drive to 40th Avenue. Before we start, I'm going to call on our City Attorney, Mr. John Shockley, who will explain the process that has gone through to get us to this point. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, and good evening. So tonight's meeting is we're holding the hearing regarding any appeals of this decision of the Special Assessment Commission regarding assessments to be levied and apportioned in 2250. Under North Dakota Century Code 40-23-14, any person who feels they're aggrieved by the decision of the Special Assessment Commission can file a written appeal with the City Commission, and that written appeal sets the jurisdiction for you to hear their appeal. Once they've filed a written appeal, they can present. They're not required to present. Just as with the Special Assessment Commission, we do take seriously written appeals. For example, we had one parcel that is also filed a written appeal tonight. The Teve property, they filed an objection to this proposed assessments at the Special Assessment Commission meeting. The Special Assessment Commission looked at that appeal, sustained it, made a decision to lower the special assessments because after it reviewed the special assessment policy, it felt that their appeal had merit based upon the special assessment policy. So it is not required that a landowner provide oral testimony or additional evidence. It's certainly their right to do that. This is not a courtroom hearing, so the rule of evidence doesn't apply. They can provide whatever information, whatever evidence they want, the written statements that they want. We have received a total of 6 written appeals, and I'm just going to list them off, and if I mess up somebody's name, my apologies. We have one from email from Mr. Elton Tufty, one from Jim Bullis on behalf of his properties. There are a Teve property and a couple other ones. I believe their legal representative is here today. One from Jacob Schalter. He's not going to appear, but we will review his written appeal. There's one from the Cass County Joint Water Resource District, and then there's one from Dion Schatz. Just briefly, I wanted to address a couple of housekeeping items. So once again, tonight is just a hearing to hear any appeals. Technically, they had to have filed a written appeal. The City Commission can choose to hear somebody that shows up at the City Commission meeting tonight. That's your decision as a City Commission. That's not my decision as a City Attorney if you want to go ahead and hear those. What I do recommend is once the hearing tonight is closed, that you do not take any additional testimony or hearing because that would be unfair to the people that have shown up and have properly filed their appeals and everything. From a housekeeping standpoint, the district was approximately $69 million, total of $69 million. Of that, we're only assessing out about $32,270,000. We did discover today that there were a number of city parcels, where like the water tower parcel, that did not get included on the assessment list. So as part of the recommendations coming forward to the city commission, we are going to recommend that those parcels be included. That will result in a small reduction in the equivalent unit across all the parcels within the entire district. Given the number of districts, it's probably, $10, $15. We don't know that for sure, but we will have that information for you at the next meeting when we're actually presenting recommendations regarding decisions. Going to tonight's hearing, I encourage you to ask whatever questions of either the appellant or city staff to make sure that you feel comfortable that you've gotten all the information. But once again, we're not asking you to make any decisions. It's more about gathering information tonight. What I would suggest is when you open the hearing, ask if there's anybody here that would like to present, have them indicate the property that they're presenting on or who they're representing. Did they file a written appeal? And then let them proceed and ask whatever questions that the commission feels appropriate to make your decision. And I'm here to assist. And if they're not satisfied with your decision, they do have the right to appeal to district court. There's a procedure to do that. In general, it is not a case that I would handle. We typically will refer that out to North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. From my perspective, it's kind of nice because I can advise the city on how the process works, make sure I make good decisions, and then a different attorney takes it on and represents the city through the insurance reserve. Happy to answer any questions before we get started, and here to help out.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Shockley before we begin? I would remind you that their decisions will not be made this evening. And the purpose of that is, in the process, is that if there's testimony that comes forward and there's technical information or whatever the case might be, it allows us to respond to that with facts and figures and the like. So that will be at our next meeting. So there is no decision to be made this evening. So with that, we're going to close the regular agenda and we're going to move into the public hearing on District 2250. I would ask first that anyone that has a written protest that has provided that to the city, that those individuals go first. So with that, any of you that are in the room that have a written protest, I would invite you to the microphone. Please state your name and the property that you're representing, and the address.
Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Keith Weston, and I'm actually representing the Southeast Cass Water Resource District, not the Cass County Joint Board. The parcel that I will be discussing is 02-3000-01240-012. It's a parcel of 15.6 acres of unplatted land west of the Cheyenne diversion, just north of 52nd Avenue, between 52nd and 40th. I guess first and foremost, Southeast Cass and the city of West Fargo have been great partners on the diversion, and my being here tonight in no way should reflect poorly on that partnership. We're here just because of the fact that the parcel in question is one that allows Southeast Cass to get rid of silt when we're cleaning out the ditch. And if you've noticed, if you've been out there, you've seen that we've done some work last year and currently doing some work. That parcel allows us to not have to haul that fill away. It also allows us to utilize some of that fill if we would need it in repair or operation and maintenance of the West Fargo diversion. And the value, as I look at it, the parcel information shows that it's worth an estimated $999,900, which would be about $64,000 an acre. If it was buildable in the current condition it is, that probably would seem to be reasonable. But based on the information that we've received from our consultants, more engineering, in order for that site to be built on, it would probably have to have most of the fill removed and repacked in order to allow that to be a buildable site for structures. I know in the past, you as a city have, with different parcels that we had to purchase to install the diversion, has given us exemptions. Others, we do pay the taxes. I understand by statute we certainly have to. So that's not in question. It says it's currently zoned as agriculture. I don't know if there's an opportunity to lower the amount of the assessment. The assessment right now, I believe, is just shy of $200,000 on that for $198,000 and some change. The one thing, if there isn't some relief, which I understand you have to run a city, we understand we have to help operate and maintain the diversion. One thing I would like to do is sit down with you as the city and determine what are our best options moving forward. Because, you know, obviously we can pass that $198,000 on to your residents here in the city, and that's probably what would happen. Another item would be for us to sell it. But in visiting with more engineering, we were able to move sediment for $1.50 to $2 a cubic foot this last year. If we have to haul it out, we've been talking of estimates of $8 to $10 a cubic foot. So those costs, again, would be passed on to the residents that are in the assessment district. The other would be, and I haven't talked with the other board managers, but would be to somehow give or gift some of that property back to the city. And again, that's not anything that's formal, but I would like to sit down with the city and the Southeast Cass Board and decide, is there a need that you have for it? And if so, maybe the Southeast Cass gives it back to the city. So with that, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Is there comments, questions from any of the commissioners? Thank you, sir. Your request is duly noted, and that certainly is part of the process, so thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on 2250's assessments?
Hello, I'm Tammy
evening.
Norgard. I'm representing a number of parties here today, or three number. Tevier is one of them. Invertase is a compilation of 4 parcels that are just south of Tevier, but I'm only appealing 2 of the special assessments of those 4 parcels. And then I'm also going to be talking about Diane Schatz's property, but I'll start with Tevier. And as Mr. Shockley has stated, we did come forward to the Special Assessment Committee. We provided an objection. Tevier and Invertase, when you take these 5 parcels together, we're being assessed $170,000 for these 5 parcels for this road project. And note, the road project is, 1 to 3 miles north of where Tevier is. Tevier, the driveway to Tevier, this new driveway parcel, is actually onto 52nd Avenue. So just kind of for your, go ahead.
I apologize. Could I get the address though? Because I want to look it up.
Sure, 4980 Cheyenne.
I'm sorry, 49?
4980.
Okay, thank you.
And there will be 4 parcels that are just south of that. I gave you the address for the Tevier parcel. I can give you the other addresses too if you need them. And I've got in my materials that I sent you, showed you a little diagram on the Invertase parcels. I'd encourage you guys to drive out there if you're out in that area, because one of the Invertase parcels is a 7-acre parcel. It's kind of a long, skinny parcel on the west side. And that is the only house, the only parcel that doesn't have a house on it. The other, the Tevier has 2 houses, and then there's 3 Invertase parcels that have houses, and then there's this one that doesn't have a house on it, and that is the driveway. And so if you drive out there right now, you'll see there's a very nice road that's been created on the driveway, cornfield, corn on various sides of it, but that's a driveway. So of these 5 parcels and 5 homes, $170,000 in special assessments. And so when you think about that, that's an average of $34,000 per house. And when you put that in context, this project is getting assessed, if you look at the assessment map, and there's mostly blue, because it's mostly 1 EU for single-family houses, beautiful houses in Carmel Place, the Wilds, Rivers Bend, really nice houses, $33.70 per house. And that's what you're deciding is basically the benefit to those single-family homes. And so when you go $3,300 per house, and then you look at these parcels, which are $34,000 per house, 10 times as much, and they're still a single-family house. This isn't high density, this isn't commercial. That's why we're here. This isn't a situation where somebody's anti-tax at all. It's when they're looking at this and saying, look at these other people, what they're paying, and special assessments are supposed to reasonably relate to the beneficial use, right, of the parcel, or be reasonably related to how much benefit that parcel gets from the project. And if you're saying that the Tevier house is getting, 10 times the value of this project than every other house in all these nice areas, I think that hopefully will maybe make you think twice and realize, yeah, maybe there's a point here. And part of this, you've got your special assessment policy, you've had it redone, and there's some math there. You've got a little chart, work the math, how many acres, and what does this end up coming out to, and depending on what category you're in. And that's one that we looked at. Tevier was being treated as if it wasn't in a neighborhood. We're like, well, no, they're tied in with water, they're tied in with sewer, they meet your definitions of a neighborhood. And so, to their credit, the Special Assessment Committee read the objection, said, you're right, yep, they revised it. So they brought it down $47,000, very much appreciated. And I feel like that at least proves our point a little bit that some of these numbers are inflated and have to come down. Now, to talk about Tevier, the resulting special assessment that has been identified is $23,000. And I still think, I appreciate the $47,000 coming down, but I still think we have 2 homes on that parcel getting assessed $23,000 when every other house is $3,300. And it just seems like it is such a dramatic increase when it's exponentially more.
Excuse me, Ms. Norgard. You said 3,200, you said 33,000.
3,370 is what the most EUs are, 3,370. What Tevier's resulting special assessment recommended by the Special Assessment Commission was 23,000. And I think kind of the way your special assessment policy is formulated is for larger parcels, when you plug larger parcels in, if there's a house in a larger parcel, it presumes that there might be some developable space. Okay? That's not unusual for a special assessment policy. And that, might be warranted if you have a farmstead with farmland, and you've got the house right here, and you've got a bunch of other acreage that's going to be developed. And so I can see that you'd kind of have this exponential factor that it's a house, but then you have all these other potential developable property areas. And that's where I think your special assessment policy also includes, if you have a large lot, then there's a reason to have an adjustment if you fall into these criteria. And that's where I'm hoping that you will see with all of my clients tonight, that your policy says that you should do an adjustment to accurately represent the true benefit the property receives. Okay, so that's what you're charged with, is you can go through the math, put the numbers through their chart, but then look at that number and say, is that what the true benefit the property receives? And that's where I'm saying in Tevier, I think the true benefit should be no more than 2 single-family homes. It's something that's what we have on there. Is that the true benefit? If you look at the Tevier parcel, the big house is in the middle of the parcel. This isn't a situation where you have a little house and the rest of it's open for development. And that's why I'm saying I don't think your special assessment policy, the number that it generates, which is 23,000 in this case, I don't think that's accurate, because that's what you plug into the formula and it comes out as 23,000, with that acreage, but I think that's presuming that you're going to have development land on that and that you'd have future benefits to future properties. And just given the way Tevier is configured, I don't think that's reasonable to assume that that's gonna happen in this case. And so basically, it's rather than looking and calculating based on what could happen and what might be able to be developed on something in, full density if it was all built out, I think you have to step back and say, what is the use here? How is this property being used? And there's no foreseeable change in the use of that property. And so I think if you accept it as is, you look at what the benefit is for that property and you assess it accordingly. I'll move on to the Invertase parcels. And this is probably the most dramatic one, the driveway, right? So we already established that the Tevier house is part of a neighborhood. So what Special Assessment Commission said is $23,000 for the house because it's part of a neighborhood. The driveway gets assessed $73,000 for a driveway. There's no houses, there's no residents. How is the driveway benefiting from this road project that is miles to the north and the intersection with I-94?
Excuse me, Ms. Snodgrass, when you reference the driveway, that driveway, is that parcel how many acres?
It is 7 acres.
7 acres, thank you.
It's 7 acres and it's very narrow. And it's a long, narrow parcel, but it's not even just a rectangle because one of these houses that I'm talking about, one of these other of the 3, is in the middle of that. And so it's cut out of that, so it's kind of like a C. And that's where I have to assume that when, I don't know if anybody did a little spot check or sanity check, does this make sense? If somebody said, oh, it's 7 acres, it's probably gonna be developed, so we need to put $73,000 of special assessments on that. If you look at the long, narrow property and the limited access on 52nd, as you probably know, you have declined to approve many subdivisions where they didn't have enough opportunity to have 2 access points on a main road. And this is a long, skinny parcel. This isn't something that's gonna be developed. Once you look at the parcel, you'll see this is not a prime candidate for development in any way, shape, or form. So I think that hopefully helps you understand a little bit too why we're here. And if the house can be part of a neighborhood, the driveway should also be part of the neighborhood. I've talked to John Shockley last week and said, and I contacted him a couple weeks ago saying, we want to talk about platting. We want to talk about platting the Invertase parcels. And, we've talked about whether to plat them as is, 4 parcels, plat them as 1 parcel, plat them as joining with the Tevier parcel. I don't have an answer. I don't have a plan at this point, but we will be coming forward with one. And so I guess my point is, it's not platted as the driveway yet, but it will be, and the driveway's there. And it's an it's an ag zoned property. It's not commercial. It's not zoned to be any kind of high density. If it's not joined with Tevier, it's gonna stay agricultural because there's no plans for any big commercial development. There's no plans for any high density of any sort. If anything, there will be less density on those properties rather than more. And so you will be seeing that coming up soon. It'll be more natural areas than any kind of development. So I ask you to give that consideration when you're trying to decide what a driveway should be assessed at. And this is another example where it's a unique shaped lot, because that's your other standard, is you should do an adjustment, to reflect the true benefit that the property receives, which I think is literally none in this case. But also looking if there are odd shaped lots, large lots, odd shaped lots, where the number that pops out of your calculation doesn't seem right. And in this case, it just does not seem right. And I don't know that this was really addressed by the Special Assessment Commission, but the number was not changed. I would say many of the same things about the other property that were challenging. And that, get the parcel number for you, 02-3000-01283. That is a parcel that's approximately 7 acres. It's on the corner of Sheyenne and 52nd. So it's in that northwest corner of the roundabout. If you've gone around the roundabout, it's right there. 1 house, older house, 1 shop. And in the middle of that parcel is another house that's been its own separate parcel. So again, it's kind of another C-shaped parcel. But while it's 7 acres, and the special assessment that has been assessed is $20,000. for that. And it's one, medium to not beautiful, very average house. And also, the owners have been told that that property they're gonna keep getting more and more of that property taken because they're on a major intersection, 52nd Avenue and Cheyenne Street. This is a very big intersection, roundabout now, but who knows what that's gonna turn into with Horace, the amount of development in Horace too. And so they've been told, expect they're gonna have a lot more land taken for right-of-way. So when you're looking at what is the acreage that should be plugged into the formula, I think the acreage is far too much, because when you have to take back extra right-of-way that's gonna be taken for north to south, east to west, on the corner, I think that severely limits, one, the development potential of the land, which is not gonna be developed anyway, but the acreage subject to development, if you're even considering how many acres to put in your formula. So that's something that I think that $20,000 is far too high. I think this is a single-family lot, always has been a single-family lot. There's no intention to change it to add more. And so if you are truly going to be looking at your policy and treating this property like you're treating other properties, and you will look at, does 20,000 accurately represent the true benefit this property is receiving? And I would say 20,000 is way too much for what this property is receiving. I would ask that you consider reducing that to be the equivalent of 1 EU, the 3,370, because I don't see that this property gets any more benefit than any other house, and beautiful houses in Rivers Bend, I don't see that this one gets any more benefit, and it's so much further away. The other thing to think about is, this isn't a property that has to take Cheyenne Street. This property probably accesses I-29 on 52nd. They're right on a major thoroughfare. And so one thing your policy doesn't recognize is you have this big area of property that's assessed equally, and you don't take into consideration that some of these properties are much further away from the road improvement and probably won't use them much because they have other accesses. I will say, when I was talking to some of your staff about the projects, there was a question like, well, yeah, we were kind of curious what was going on and what that was going to be used for. And so to the extent there's any curiosity about, well, we better assess it high because it's going to be who knows, it could be some big commercial development or something. It certainly is not. And we're starting that process. We'll be in here with the plating. But if you compare this to what is sitting at the corner of 32nd and Cheyenne, like the lights in that area and the businesses to the south of 32nd there, and you look at a driveway is getting assessed $73,000, and this house is being assessed $20,000, and there's apartment complexes that are getting, what's that, 50 units, and they're $11,000. These restaurants that rely on the business coming in and out every day, they're part of the reason that this road project even was initiated, and they're getting assessed $11,000, and this house on the corner is $20,000, and it's still, 2 miles south of there. So I think that when you're looking at fairness and equity, those are things that I hope that you will consider. Again, this isn't a situation where anybody doesn't want to pay taxes. This is just what makes sense, what's fair, what's reasonable. And $170,000 for these 5 parcels is not fair or reasonable. And so we'd really appreciate it if we could have a little bit additional reduction in the special assessments, much like the Special Assessment Commission did. All right, so that's my arguments for Tevier and Invertez. I have one more client. Her name is Diane Schatz. And just a little bit about her property. If you're going on 32nd, as far out of West Fargo as you can get, going west, she's right on the Cheyenne diversion, on the south. If you've been to Rendezvous Park, you've been to her house. She's lived there forever. Forever, I don't know how long she's lived there, but it's been a long time. So this has been her house, very nice house. Do you want the address? 1225 32nd Avenue. And so she was annexed into the city late, and I think this is important that you understand a little of the history behind this. She was annexed in, her husband has recently passed away, but he was involved in the discussions of annexing, and he was assured by the city, there's no disadvantage to annexing. You need to get in the city, be a part of the city. No disadvantages at all. And, their acreage now is 14.5 acres. It used to be more, but when then they agreed to be annexed, didn't fight about anything, they agreed to be annexed. Well, then when Rendezvous Park was being developed, they're like, well, Diane, could you donate some land for Rendezvous Park? Oh, sure, okay, so they donated land to Rendezvous Park. They weren't paid for any of this. Good neighbors, community builders. And now, and she kind of shakes her head because she says, okay, today, if you look up her tax information or special information, you'll see that today, with this project, she would owe a total of $250,000 in specials on this home she's lived in for a really long time. And
State
so
that amount again, please.
it's a total of $250,000. The assessment of this project used to be $154,000. When I looked it up on the internet on the City of West Fargo page, it says $119,000 right now is the amount, and so that's the number I used, that it's $119,000, which must have been changed because it was $154,000. And this is one of those examples where you have an older person who's lived here forever, been part of your community, and as you apply this formula and you keep adding more specials and more specials, and you're pushing her out. You're absolutely pushing her off her property, because who can stay and afford to stay when suddenly she's got $250,000 in assessments on her parcel? So 119 are with this project, and the remainder are current balance that are unpaid. I don't know how much she's paid off at this point. But then the kicker to all of this is she was, told, come into the city because it's going to be great for you. Well, the kicker is she can't even get sewer, or hasn't gotten sewer. So she's not perfectly clear about what happened there, but she's said she was kind of told somebody screwed something up with the road. They forgot her, didn't put her in the project, and then couldn't get her in the project. And I know I did have a conversation with Mr. Shockley about that, about whether it's a big force main transmission line something, or force sewage line, and they weren't able to just extend it to her house for some reason. She has to pay for a lift station in order to hook on to the sewer system, which is really expensive for one person to do. So, and that, like I'm saying, all I'm doing is reporting what I've been told in terms of why she can't have sewer. But when somebody's assessed $250,000 and they can't have sewer, there's something wrong, right? So I think that that's another reason to think of her. I'm just giving you the visual of who she is, where she's come from, what she's done for the city, and she feels like she's being treated very unfairly in this situation with this amount of specials. I did include a picture in my materials of her property, and if you're pulling it up, you can see it. So I'll go back to how your special assessment policy works. You plug in your 14.5 acres. Here's what spits out what the amount should be. And she's not platted, and she's not in an established neighborhood, so she's getting, the full boat of special assessments. We are in the process. We've been talking to an engineering firm about getting platted, and then suddenly they stopped talking, so I'm not sure what that's about, but stopped calling back on platting that. But the way that if it's $119,000 in special assessments, you'd have to assume there's gonna be like 35 homes put into on her property. If you went with that $3,300 per home. And so if you're looking at fairness, equity, how your policy works, if you look at her parcel from above in this visual, where would you put 35 units, 35 homes? If that's what you're trying to say, well, is this 119,000, is that the right number? And I'd say clearly it is not the right number. One, you shouldn't be using 14.5, because when she came into the city, she still owns to the center of 32nd Avenue. That's part of her property, because for some reason the city doesn't own the whole corridor. She has there's a right-of-way on her property, which is strange to me. But so you need to take back and discount the acreage based on the setbacks from, the roadway, and the setbacks from the road and the sidewalks. But then you see it from the air. She's on the Cheyenne diversion, so there's setbacks there. And then she's got beautiful rows of trees, perfectly manicured, set so many feet apart. Everything's just perfect and meticulous. And so I would say anybody that wanted to develop property there I can't imagine somebody going in and clear cutting all the trees. But even within that, so you've got this nice little pocket, and she has her house, a big shop, and a garage. And when you actually look at her property from the air, 14 acres sounds like a lot. but there isn't a lot of developable property in there. And so even if you were saying, well, if it were subject to development, how many EUs should we add to that to make sense? If you were thinking that way, I would say, why aren't you looking at it as what is the benefit her property is receiving from this? And it's a person, a single person now, and what is the benefit she's getting from this road improvement? And I would say not much. And her parcel, if you compare to her daughter's parcel, they're at, I think, 20,000, and they're an 8-acre parcel, 7-acre parcel just north of Tevier with a single-family home on a big parcel. They're getting assessed $20,000, $23,000. Tevier is getting assessed $23,000 for an 8-acre parcel. She's getting assessed $119,000 for a 15-acre parcel or a 14-acre parcel. With a lot of that should be setbacks. And so again, what's fair? None of that is equitable and fair to be treating her that way and to putting all those specials on there, because it's no different. There's a single house, shop, garage on a big parcel, centrally located. It's not like there's a big area that they can move into for future development. All right, well, those are the only comments that I have. I think as a closing on Diane, I would just say she really doesn't want to be forced out of the city. This has been her home, and it's where her daughter is. It's where she raised her kids. She really wants to stay here. But this is something, it's just an example of how when you do keep layering all these special assessments on people, you do make it unaffordable for people to stay in West Fargo. Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Questions for the lady? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that has a written protest already submitted?
Hi, David Campbell. I had filed a written appeal, but I didn't hear my name.
Yeah, your written appeal had been, filed to the Special Assessment Commission. They made a decision, they made a recommendation, and it's up to the city commission if they want to hear your appeal, but the Special Assessment Commission kept the assessments the same, but they recommended a policy adjustment to the city commission of capping the equivalent unit that would be charged per building to 150 rather than the full 300. And that's the recommendation that went to the city commission. So rather than the full, there's 306 units approximately in that building, it would be capped at 150. And this is a really good opportunity. I just wanted to clarify, there was a misstatement made that apartment buildings are charged, like there's an example of 50 units being charged so much. Each unit is charged 0.6 of an equivalent unit. So a 50-unit building would have about 30 equivalent units applied to it. The city commission can certainly hear your appeal. That's up to them, and I defer to the chair on hearing the appeal.
Have they seen my written appeal?
Your appeal went to the Special Assessment Commission,
Okay.
and they ruled on it. You would be appealing the Special Assessments Commission's decision to this board. We can certainly, if they say, yeah, we'll hear it, we'll make sure that they get your written appeal also. It's not my decision, it's the city commission's decision.
Okay.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you. I just want to ask John a question. So I know that we capped it. Do we cap it at 100 or 150?
The Special Assessment Commission recommended 150. However, if the city commission wanted to go with that recommendation or reduce
Right now, the recommendation is 150
150, you could,
from the regular, which would have been 360 some,
yeah, how many ever
whatever it
units
is. So
are-
I guess I'm just, okay, I just want to make it clear here that I don't know why somebody would appeal something where we're capping it at 150 to 360, but that's,
yeah,
Mayor's
it was,
Well, the gentleman's being made aware of that at this
yeah,
point.
okay.
and
I thought he knew
wasn't
that
here.
already. I thought he already knew that.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd have to go back and redo the math on it, but, yeah, I guess, I don't want to go through my whole letter on why I think it's very unfair and not equitable, but, we're a developer and owner and manager of apartment buildings, and I'm from West Fargo. I live in West Fargo, and we're in 22 different cities, and West Fargo, by far, the worst for the amount of special assessments we're being assessed. Prior to the adjustment that I just heard, it was something like 5 times more expensive than any other market we're in. So just want that noted.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Anyone else that has filed a written protest that would like to speak at this time at the hearing? Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on 2250 Special Assessment District? Anyone at all that would like to speak on Special Assessment District of 2250? The public hearing is closed. We are back in the regular agenda. As we stated early in the beginning of this, the discussion is for information, and there will be no decision made on any of the protests. Obviously, the commission will be in deliberations and discussions with staff and legal counsel with regard to our policies and all that, and all of the information that was provided us to this evening will be considered. So thank you for joining us this evening. Moving on, item number 2 is the office lease agreement. Mr. Scott, Assistant City Administrator, has a office lease agreement that he'd like to present to the commission.
Good evening. Thank you,
Good evening, Mr. Scott.
Commission President Dardis, members of the commission. I'm going to change out the agenda that you see on the screen here. Okay. At your last meeting on October 3rd, there was discussion on proposed 5-year lease agreement. After which, the City Commission directed staff to work on an option for an agreement that has a 3-year term. And as you can see in your packet, the property owner provided new rates for a 3-year term, which were slightly higher than the rates for a 5-year term. And in this table, you can see what that difference is on an annual basis and with CAMs included. For the first 3 years, of course, there's just a little over a couple $1,000 a year. And then in years 4 and 5, of course, with the 3-year term, one thing we could do is, of course, extend that lease agreement. I'm not sure on the specifics of what that would cost. But you can see if we went with a 5-year term, we are certainly then locked in for nearly $200,000 additional expense. So the other information that you see in the packet, this is really the same information that was presented Monday night. I would still estimate the cost for the first year to be approximately $150,000, maybe slightly more now that we know that the first year rate would be a couple $1,000 more. And again, that's about $90,000 or so for the rent, about $35,000 for desk furniture, and $18,000 for city fiber installation. And then, of course, there's miscellaneous items. So again, we're just estimating that the first year's costs would be about $150,000. With that, I would answer any other questions you might have regarding the option for a 3-year term.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I have both commissioners. Commissioner Olson first.
You said that we would be locked into a 5-year lease, but I think there's a termination clause that we could vacate after given a 180-day notice. So technically we're not locked into anything beyond 6 months, though, on any of these leases, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yep, thank you.
Just want to make sure that we weren't really locked into any length of time other than the 180-day
Mr. Shockley.
Went with the 5-year lease, there would be a small breakage fee because they're capitalizing some of the initial investment. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it wouldn't necessarily be free. There would be some cost to breaking the lease early.
Thank you. Do we know what that would be? Like, when you say huge, is it, I guess where I'm going with this is it better to do a 3-year lease with a 2-year option? Or are we just better to do the 5-year and be done with it? Dustin, I guess, as in charge of this, what is your recommendation? How do you feel? That's
Yes,
appropriate
yes,
to ask,
sir.
Mayor.
That's fine.
Thank you, Commissioners. I did pull up the agreement that was before the commission on Monday, where the early termination clause does say that there would be an early termination fee equal to 6 months of the current monthly base rate. So, we could work some math, but
Half a
roughly,
year's, yeah.
yeah, 30,
How much would that be?
30,000.
37,000?
Plus some of the fit-up costs.
And plus some of the fit-up costs, yep.
Plus the cams or not? We wouldn't have to pay that on the cams, would we?
No.
Just a square footage rate.
I think you'd have to pay the cams too, because that's part of your base rent for those 6 months if you're breaking the lease. But we could check the cams aren't,
$6,
Yeah.
$6.06 a square foot for the cams, and it does say that it would be the unamortized portion of the landlord's total fit-up costs. I don't believe they're very extensive, less than $100,000, I know that, but I don't have they have told us that they're waiving those costs, even with going with the 3-year term, but I don't have that exact figure. I know that it was less than $100,000, so that would be a fee, certainly, to terminate early if we wanted to, if we were into that 5-year agreement.
If the term in the language of the lease says that it's based on the fit-up costs, there are no fit-up costs. So I'd have to defer to Mr. Shockley, because you do a multiplier times 0 and it's 0.
right, they have standard language, and so our assumption, they were gonna charge fit-up costs, but apparently they're waiving that. So in the final lease, we would say that they're waiving it. But you would still have your breakage fee if you went with
see.
the 5-year term, so.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, additional questions?
Just one. I'm sorry,
Mr.
Rob.
Simmons, go ahead.
My concern would be is that just the way we're talking now, it almost sounds like litigation if we were to break this up. There could be, it looks a little messy to me. I just prefer to do a lease, whatever it's 3 or 5, whatever, just do it. And I don't like the idea of all of a sudden we're assuming that there's a setup cost, or we're assuming, you know what I'm saying? That usually gets us into trouble.
Well, we would have that finalized before we sign the lease, but there would be a breakage fee. It would just be a matter of calculating it, and you could just roughly assume 6 months of rent as your breakage fee if you wanted to terminate early, which is not uncommon for a commercial lease.
In your summary sheet, there's the second paragraph, Mr. Scott, it says this space will accommodate up to 13 staff members. And at the present time, we would be sending over, how many?
Up to 9. Yep, our assessing department, 6 staff there, and then there's also 3 in our JS department that we haven't made a final decision on yet, but we're leaning towards those 2 groups. There have been discussions with the police department. They had some space occupied over at the library, which is no longer available for them. They are trying to accommodate everybody internally here, but we anticipate that they would be the next group that would need to utilize space here.
Can you give me a little more definition in that same first sentence in the second paragraph, and other support areas? What is that?
Yes, so along with the conference room, which everyone understands and can visualize a conference room, support areas are things like where the printers and storage areas might be, a little coffee station. So those are just little nooks and crannies. It's not, the square footage isn't based on just the workable office space. There's other common areas like a conference room and we have where you might have storage and so on and so forth, yep.
Very good.
Would there be servers over there? That would be, any IT stuff like that over there too? Or
Absolutely,
not?
yes. So technology certainly will be there. We don't know exactly, we've been talking certainly with the IT department. We're not sure if we need a separate server room. We don't think so, but we will address that when we get there. Certainly will be the right infrastructure before we move in.
So, for the public's knowledge, again, so we're talking about the assessing department and GIS?
Yes, as more of the immediate move, with the option to move other staff.
Yes, sir.
Yep, and
Very good. Commissioner Olson?
In the draft lease, on the second page of it, it says that the possession date would be December 1 and the rent would commence on January 1. So does that mean that we could move in as of December 1? The rent's not due until the 1st?
that's my understanding, yes. And this particular space is relatively ready. There are some things they need to do, some fit-up type things, but the walls are up. You know, the meat and potatoes are there, but there's still a little work that needs to be done. We could be in by January 1. However, on our end, we need to coordinate a fiber utility line to be extended into the building, certainly work with our building and grounds and our IT departments to make sure the infrastructure is all there. But as far as the space is concerned, the possibility is certainly there to be in by the end of, by December.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
You just brought up a good topic on the fiber. If we did go into this lease, at what point could we start installing the fiber line, and how long would that actually take to get
Run
it?
Well, one of the discussion points that we reviewed on Monday night was to hire a contractor immediately to get that fiber line in before the ground freezes up. We do have a quote, a few quotes, I believe, from contractors. One of them was certainly willing and able to get in as soon as we gave them a green light. We did talk about funding options too, and as far as that fiber line would be funded, we could use the COVID funds, the capital improvement sales tax, and/or reserves. So there are funding mechanisms in place to deal with the immediate capital costs.
But how long do you think it would take to actually, in a perfect world, if conditions were right, how long does it take to actually get the fiber line in there? So then, it could be in there long before December 1, right?
Right, and to install the fiber really is only about a block away. It's right on 13th Avenue. There's an easy access point right at an intersection there. We're talking a few hundred feet. It's probably a day or two worth of installation. Now, once it gets to the building, there's some connections and things to do there, but relatively easy.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. For reference, Dustin, if I recall, I know, Mayor, you remember this. It was some years ago, we did, and it wasn't a pilot, but it was a program for that building. And I know that they pretty high-tech wires, the Cat 3s and stuff like that, should already be in there, so it shouldn't be a huge, once we get to the building, there's not a lot we should really have to do, because we already did all that years ago, so.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Simmons. That is absolutely true. We did confirm that. I know you mentioned that a while back, and we were able to confirm that with the owner, that there is adequate infrastructure strung out throughout the building. It's just a matter of getting it there, making the right connections, and then turning whatever switches we need to that IT world to make sure everything's functional.
So it is a good fit. It really is.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other additional questions for Mr. Scott or on the contract for Mr. Shockley?
Oh, I guess one more.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
If we did go with the 3-year lease, would there be anything in the lease that we would be able to extend it if need be versus terminating it?
Yeah, there's an extension clause.
Okay.
Like with a 2-year option or something, you mean, right? Right.
Or
That's standard, isn't it?
we wouldn't want to go month to month, because then they would just,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I may, Mayor, I will
Please, Commissioner.
I will defer my vote to you, because you're probably the most experienced about leasing buildings and facilities up here, so.
Well,
I'm at the mercy of you folks. I'll go whatever you want to support.
the decision to be made here is obviously the 3 to 5 years. And, as the city continues to grow and we have to continue to add staff, if in fact that the extension of the lease is not too, it doesn't have a great deal of penalty, and I don't believe Mr. Shockley is indicated that that is the case, I'd recommend the 3-year lease, but that's up to you. My fellow commissioners here, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion for the 3-year lease.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
I'll second it just for discussion purposes.
All right, we have a second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the lease at, for office space. I don't see the address here, so I can't state it. Anyway,
1905 Berryway Parkway.
all right, thank you. Is there any further, Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Olson, excuse me, we're in a discussion period.
So just, so it's known that if we go with, for over the first 3 years, by going with a 3-year term, it would cost an extra $6,700 in rent by doing that. And then we don't know what it would be if we would need to extend it, you know, how they would increase the rate after that. Just to put it out there.
My point is that with our growth and the budget that we approved on Monday night with staffing and the like, that the space for 13 in 3 years might not be adequate, and we may have to look for additional space. So that's part of my reasoning here, is that we are a city that continues to grow, and staffing is required for us to deal with all of that, and so that's my concern. That's where I'm at with this, is that, you know, we're going to move over, how many assessors? 6?
6
And
assessors.
GIS is 3, is 9. So we have a little more extra room. I appreciate that, but that's where I'm at. Commissioner?
The other thing is, if we do a 3-year lease with a 2-year option, we're gonna know what those 2-year options are before we sign the 3-year lease. So we'll know that. We won't wait till the
Right.
third year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Dustin will know that. And
We're in a win-win situation whether we do 3 or 5. I don't think there's a bad decision to be made here. My only concern, like I said, as we continue to grow, that there's a real possibility that we might outgrow this space that we need. So again, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commissioner President. Just want to inform the commission that there are additional units within this building and on this second floor. There was one that was larger and one that was smaller. We picked something that we thought was about the right size to grow into within the 3 to 5 years, but we could also look at including other spaces. Now, we don't know if we would grow into that and when, but it's just something for the commission to take into consideration, and if we maybe could even ask the owner if there's a first right of refusal on a part of the other parts of the building, we could certainly do that and make that a part of the lease agreement.
That's good information to know. Thank you. Again, we have a motion on the floor for approving the 3-year lease. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the 3-year lease, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Next order of business is non-agenda items. Commissioners, do you have anything that you'd like to bring forward at this time? We don't have any department heads here. Oh, we do have, we kind of, we got Eric over there. Is there anything that you'd like to bring forward, Eric? All right. Mr. Scott? Nothing?
No, sir.
Mr. Shockley, anything for the good of the order? All right. Commissioner Simmons?
move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson?